to Shiloh Ranch Live.
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting good at this. We're kind of professionals now.
I still get nervous.
Yeah, no, I just assume it's going to get messed up somehow, and that's just part of it.
Yeah.
So nothing to be nervous about.
Yep.
Welcome to Shiloh Ranch. We're excited. This is our fourth online service. This is our third one from here. Everybody's kind of in the same place. You see the kind of the traction now of people learning how to share and share with their friends, and hopefully that's been your experience. You're having people jump on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. I just wanted to say, if you missed any of our Live at Shiloh episodes from this past week, you can watch those on our YouTube channel at any time, as well with all of our live content that we do throughout the week and on Sundays. So make sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss that. We'll have the new live content weekly schedule coming out later today, so make sure and watch for that and put that on your calendar.
It's Palm Sunday, and something that's interesting to me about Palm Sunday was that you had an entire nation of people asking Jesus for a solution that they saw that they needed, and Jesus wouldn't do it. And that's what's so cool about, like, right now you hear people are like, I can't believe that we're running underground or we're hiding from this fear, running in fear. Like, just pause for a second. Jesus is got this history of not giving us the solution that we asked for, but giving us the solution that we needed. And every time a church is underground, and I would consider this in some form different, but we are not underground right now. This is not persecution. To compare the two is almost a joke. But when we face difficulties that we wouldn't have volunteered for, we see it as being a setback. And like Palm Sunday, they were so excited that Jesus would maybe take up their cause and fix the coronavirus. And instead he said, no, I'm not gonna answer your request the way that you're asking him. This is what Palm Sunday was. He said, I'm gonna give you a solution that is so much bigger. And like seeing the heart of people kind of returning back to God, I'm actually hearing people repeating things from the sermons back. It's landing different. And so I'm so interested that here it is Palm Sunday and we're seeing new difficulties and new challenges, and how cool that God's not answering it the way that we're asking for it, but we're getting new opportunities.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, us as a team here, we kind of have the luxury of hearing the sermon a little bit early because we record it earlier in the week. And I know that this one, especially for me, I feel like was just so much, I don't know, it was heavier. It was an awesome sermon. So I'm excited for you guys to hear that.
We're going to encourage you guys to share this. Always before, what's crazy is if you invite someone to church, then there's like, are you coming? What time are we going to meet? Am I going to meet you there? Or maybe you want to check this place out and you're like, I don't want to go by myself. You can literally invite people right now by the share. And we looked at if you're watching this live, it's the bottom left-hand corner. By doing that, you're inviting people that may not have known about us. And usually before, I always felt kind of weird, like, oh, share with your friends. I felt like a YouTuber. This is what church is right now.
Yeah.
This is what church is. And by sharing it, you're actually inviting people to check it out. They're in a safe place where they can observe and decide, if this is a good fit or not.
Yeah.
But I've been super encouraged with people who are like, I didn't know this existed. We didn't know you guys were there. And maybe finding like a deeper understanding in their faith too. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we talked last week about our kids' church online group that we started. And so I just want to encourage you, if you have kids at home that have been to kids' church here before or maybe haven't, Tab has been doing an awesome job with that. She's been posting stuff every single day. She's been bringing in guests and stuff like that. So if that's something that you want to join in on and get your kids in on, it's called Shiloh Ranch Kids Church. Is that right, Lacey? It's a group. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the group and you're going to ask to join the group. For privacy reasons, we do have it set up to where you have to ask to join, but Tab's been really good at inviting people and adding people in every single day. So again, if you have kids and that's something you want to join in on, we highly encourage that.
We're praying for you parents. We know that right now is kind of a stressful time that nobody really had planned. And so I'm so grateful for Tab. We're getting messages from people who are like, they wake up in the morning, they're militant. Their kids are like, give me the phone. We got to log in. We got to see what Tab's doing. Yeah. So shout out to Tab for the job that she's doing in that. Is that
Anything else? I think that's it.
Okay. We're going to go into a time of worship. Thanks for jumping on. Like I said, hit the share button, invite your friends. We're excited to have you here. And here we go.
Yeah.
I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of a night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You make me brave. You make me brave. You call me out beyond the shore into the waves. Oh, you make me brave. You make me brave. No fear can hinder now the love that made a way. Oh, you make me brave. You make me brave. Oh, you call me out beyond the shore into the waves. Oh, you make me brave. Oh, you make me brave. And no fear can hinder now the promises you made. Oh, you make me brave. Oh, you make me brave. And you call me out beyond the shore into the waves. Oh, you make me brave. Oh, you make me brave. And no fear can hinder now the love that made a way. You make me brave. You make me brave. You call me out beyond the shore into the waves. And you make me brave. Oh, you make me brave. And no fear can hinder now the promises you made. Because of love, in wave after wave, crashes over me, crashes over me. For you are for us, you are not against us. Champion of heaven, you made a way. Oh, champion of heaven, you made a way for all to enter in. Yeah, God, we just thank you for this time of worship. God, we thank you for making us brave. God, we know that you are for us. You are not against us.
So God, whatever season we're in, would you just make us brave? Help us to acknowledge your presence and acknowledge that you are a good, good Father who never lets us down. God, we just thank you again for this time of worship. We continue to ask for your presence in our lives. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
I know I just commented this on there, but it's been so cool to see people that we know from so many different circles all in one place right now. I know we're going to eventually go back to faces, and that's great, and we're looking forward to that. But how cool right now to just have everybody all in one place, and even people like that we haven't known getting to kind of see names and faces. So thanks for jumping on here.
Yeah, one thing we wanted to mention is if you have any prayer requests, feel free to comment them in the live stream, or you can go to our website or our app and go to the Connect page and you can submit prayer requests there. But we're going to have someone watching, so if you have any prayer requests, you can leave them in the live stream comments. We'll make sure we're praying for you. We know that some people might need it a little bit extra in this season of life. So again, you can go to our app, you can go to our website, or you can just comment them here on the live stream, and we can all just kind of be in community praying for each other.
We're going to keep going in the series that we're in about the window being open. We talked last week about Jehoash and how he was instructed to take advantage of a season, a time when the window was open, and that the decisions he made in that season when the window was open, the choices that he was given, had an impact on the future. And I think that's just so timely for where we are right now. I mean, I know there's a lot of struggling, there's a lot of suffering. That's always been good for people to experience. The suffering is never enjoyable, but the Bible even says that in those seasons that God's close to the brokenhearted. And so in this season, when the window may be open for us as a church, as a nation, as people to start reconsidering things at a deeper level again, I want you guys to be praying about what windows that you might have not seen, opportunities that you might not be seeing that Jesus is trying to make available. So we're going to keep going with the series, and then we'll jump back on here when we get done. I want you guys to know that I am praying for all of my extrovert friends. I know that this is kind of a rough season for the extroverts. I'm also praying for our introverts, and here's why. I am married to one. And so the advice is same, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. Here's what I want to say to you. Whether you're extrovert or introvert, here's what I want to say to you. This is temporary. For the extroverts, like, this won't last forever. It's going to be okay. If you're an introvert, don't get too used to it. It's just a season. Here's a challenge, and I think right now is a great opportunity. I think we are in a season right now where this is a challenge that is absolutely doable. Here's what I want to challenge you to. The next time there's a clear night, when there's a clear night with no cloud cover, what I want to challenge you to do, no matter where you live, no matter where you're from, even if you're listening to this 5 years down the road, here's what I want to challenge you to do. The next time there's a clear night, I want you to lay a blanket down. I don't mean just glance. Lay a blanket down and take in the stars for a minute to this point right here. Here's what I want you to think about. Each star that we can't count is a sun in its own area. And they're saying that each star that we're able to visibly see with our own eye is probably bigger than our sun. So the next time that you get the opportunity, and I'm serious, do it with your family, do it with people that you are in quarantine with. Like, go take a minute, lay a blanket down, and just in silence, stay there and sit there and consider how vast the world is. And here's what will happen. If you do it long enough, you stay there long enough and you do it in silence, it's not like a social gathering, you're not out there just chatting it up. If you'll just sit there and take in what it is that you're looking at, they're also saying that a lot of the stars that you're seeing have already burned out. They actually burned out before you were born, but it took the light that long to travel from where it was to where you are. I mean, we turn a light switch on in your bedroom, it's light instantly. The speed of light is so fast, and it's moving from where that light originated to your eye after the star itself is burned out. If you'll do this, if you'll take this seriously, if you'll actually do it, here's what will happen. If you stare at it long enough, a window will open. We talked about it last week, that there are times in life when windows open, like after the loss of a loved one. It's like we see life for more clearly. When we have a near-death experience, we see things more clearly. We understand more about perspective in those little moments where the windows are open. And the same thing will happen if you go out and just take in the vastness of the universe. If you can just allow yourself to do it and stay there until this begins to happen, the vastness of the universe and what that means for how small our little galaxy is. And not only how small our little galaxy is, but how small our little planet is in that little whole system that we've got going on. And then consider that our planet, for as small as it is, we are so small. And not only that, but our planet is old and we are not going to live for very long. What happens is, and it happens to everybody, I don't know anybody that hasn't experienced this at some point, is you start to begin to feel, you can begin to feel, the window opens and you begin to feel how small you are. And I don't think that's bad. Here's the truth, is that you are always small. In temper tantrums and moments of frustration and moments where you're stressing out about how you're going to pay the bills, in moments where you're just zoning out watching the TV, you've always been small, but if you're not paying attention, that window can close and you can forget it and you can begin to live as though the world needs you in it to work. See what I mean? Here's what I'm saying. The window opens and you see something that was always true, but when the window's closed, it's still true, you just may not see it. I want to go to Luke chapter 8, verse 43, and I'm going to talk about a story that probably most of us have heard. This is sort of one of the greatest hits in most churches. Most churches have heard this story, but I think because of the nature of where this woman was at and the nature of where we are as a nation right now, I think we're going to see it a little differently. Let me read it to you. In the crowd that day, there was a woman who for 12 years had been afflicted with hemorrhages. I'm reading it out of the Message Bible. I just feel like it's a more kind version of this story. You can look it up in any version you want. I'm reading it out of the Message. She had spent every penny she had on doctors, but not one had been able to help her. She slipped in from behind and touched the edge of Jesus' robe. At that very moment, her hemorrhaging stopped, and Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When no one stepped forward, Peter said, "But Master, we've got crowds of people on our hands. Dozens have touched you." Verse 46, Jesus insisted, "Someone touched me. I felt power discharging from me." Verse 47, when the woman realized that she couldn't remain hidden, she knelt trembling before him. In front of all the people, she blurted out her story, why she touched him, and how at the same moment she was healed. Verse 48, Jesus said, "Daughter, you took a risk trusting me, and now you're healed and whole. Live well, live blessed." So here's the truth of this story is that I have read that story probably once or twice a year as long as I've known Jesus my entire life. It always gets brought up. You hear it in sermons, you hear it referenced. But here's some concepts about this story that are more specifically unique for where we are. Her story has never changed. In the Bible, her story has never changed. We've always heard it. But our perspective changes, and sometimes when our perspective changes, we can see the same information with a new perspective. Just like looking at the stars, it reminds you of a new truth. Like what we're going to see in this woman's story is this, is that her deeper revelation of Jesus came because she was being forced into, ready for this? Because of her health issue, she had been forced into what was called, she was ceremonially unclean. She was considered unclean, and let me say it this way, because we've heard those words before, but let me say it this way. For 12 years, she had been in quarantine. She had been pushed to the edges for 12 years. Now, if you just said that a month ago, people would be like, yeah, we heard this story. Now, look, our perspective is open. We have a window open to hear her story and go, oh, I get it. I get why that would be challenging. She had been in quarantine for 12 years. She had lost everything financially. Everything that she had lost, she'd lost to the doctors, and the doctors couldn't help her. So she was in quarantine. She had tested positive, and she was 100% contagious. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you were unclean in that day and you touched something, that was considered unclean also. So everything she would have touched would have also been unclean. She was contagious. She was infected, and she was contagious. Do you see why all of a sudden her story and our story, we go, oh, wait a minute, the window's open. I can see it now a little bit differently. And it's a window to hear her story at a more personal level. Actually, I'll say this. This is probably the first time in my life I've ever looked at her story and felt like I had something in common with it. Like, I've heard her story before, and I never felt personally connected to it. Now I hear her story, and there's a little part of it that I go, wait a minute, I think I maybe understand her position maybe a little bit better. We'll start at the beginning. In the crowd that day, there was a woman who for 12 years, for 12 years, we go back 12 years to 2008. I don't know what you were doing in 2008. Most of the people who work for us were probably in kindergarten, somewhere in there. They're always teasing me about being old. I get my jabs in on camera. 2008. So since 2008, she had been infected with, let's call it, for the sake of conversation, she'd had the coronavirus. She had this illness that had caused her to be isolated and quarantined and pushed away from society. And not only did she have it, everyone knew she had it. So she was socially outcast too because they didn't want to get it. I mean, that's what is so interesting to me about our time right now is not the people who are getting sick or the people who are going broke. As bad as those things are, it's the reaction of people who are just panicked in their fear. That to me is the most frustrating part. Like, we get that there are difficulties. We get that there is sickness. We get that there are challenges. I get it. But what we don't have to succumb to is the panic, the group panic. You have a choice to overcome that. Different sermon. Okay. She had spent every penny she had on doctors, but none had been able to help her. So we know that physically she had been tortured. I mean, she had been facing a physical issue and the anemia that comes with that. I mean, we don't have to go too far down the biology lesson, but she had suffered physically for 12 years. And I don't know about you, but like if I have a headache that lasts for too long, I get in a terrible mood. Like I've had chronic hip pain. I know what it's like to be in pain over a long period of time, and it literally has the ability to affect your mental health. So she was physically tortured. She had been socially rejected. I want to clear something up. And I hope there are some, I hope there's some legalism teachers listening. I hope they are. I hope they're tuning in. And if you're watching on camera, I'm going to talk to you for just a second, and everybody else gets to listen. If you are a preacher who would dare say that sickness is a punishment for an inferior faith, if you would go as far as to say, well, if you're suffering with your sickness and you were to misquote what the Bible says, by his stripes you are healed, not of your sins, but of your sin, and that everything that was due to you is now being healed on an eternal scale, and you would dare say that someone's sickness is an inferior health, what you are appealing to, let me just clarify, what you are appealing to is a justice scale. You do bad things, you get bad results. You do good things, you get good results. You are playing on a justice scale. And to play on the justice scale, you have to discount the unfairness of the cross. Because the cross was immeasurably unfair. But because of the unfairness of the cross, it opens the door for us as people to begin to operate on the mercy scale, a scale that says it is unfair to my own advantage. So when you go back to a justice scale and go, well, if you know somebody that's got sick, maybe there's some things in their life you don't know about, what you're doing is you are calling down fire on your own head. You are calling for a justice that you can't even fulfill. But we know that she was socially rejected because as people, we have this tendency to as a group, to move away from things that make us uncomfortable, to move us away from things that create distance with things that make us uncomfortable. When there's something that's gross or difficult or challenging, our natural response is to move away from it. That's why the first responders that are running into the challenges are such heroes, is they're going against human nature, which is to move away from things that make us uncomfortable. So just at a personal level, can we please get over the justice scale of the God's angry, and this is the result of God's anger, and he's been pushed to his limits. Can I just tell you something? God doesn't have his limits. He has his parameters. He has his principles. Like, God is a God of principles. You're not pushing God to his limits. God's not your parent. God is not having a bad day. God is not going through some issues. God is not having a challenging season. God is God is God, and you have not pushed him to his limits. This is not the result of an angry God getting mad at us and thus taking it out on us. Because what do you tell somebody whose sweet little old grandma has passed away because of this? What, that God was mad at her? Come on. Come on. Spiritually exhausted. Don't you think she lost everything she owns? She tried everything. Don't you know that she had done everything she knew to do? And there's nothing more exhausting than feeling like you've gotten to the end of your rope. You have done everything that you know to do, and nothing has worked. It says that she slipped in from behind and touched the edge of Jesus' robe. I want to make sure we catch what just happened here. She's unclean. She has the virus. And she ignores her quarantine. If you're about to think that I'm going to take this to don't obey the quarantine, that's not what I'm saying. That's not this sermon. I'm just telling you what she did. It's not prescriptive. I'm not telling you do what she did. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we see it in her story that she had to ignore a quarantine, because it wasn't a national quarantine like we're under where it's socially acceptable. It was specifically, uniquely designed for her. You stay away. And she didn't. She was slipping through the crowd. Let me tell you something. If you have the virus and you are contagious, slipping through the crowd is a very uncool thing to do. Very uncool. Based on the risk that she was taking, what we know is that it is an act of a desperate person. She, in her own mind, has come to a place where she realizes it is time to make a desperate act to get to Jesus. And maybe, in fact, in her mind, this was her last chance. Maybe this was her last chance to have an experience. And let me remind you, you don't have to understand your problem to believe that Jesus is the solution. Let me say this again. Let me just paint a picture for you. If Jet is 11 years old and he goes, Dad, can I drive to town? What he's saying is, I just want independence. I just want to be free. I just want to be independent. And I think driving will give me that. But if I'm a dad, if I'm a good dad, then what I'll say is, Jet, if what you're wanting is independence, you need to take your school more serious. Because your education is going to provide you with far more independence than me letting you drive will ever be able to do. I know that's a little bit of a mind exercise, it's a thought exercise, but if what I'm asking God for is independence, he may come back and give me an answer that doesn't look like the solution that I asked for. Maybe she saw this as her last chance. Can I remind you that even when you're down to your last chance, it's still a chance? She saw a window. How's that? Is that a better way to say it? She saw an open window. This woman who had been oppressed and rejected and isolated and quarantined and contagious and everything that you don't want to be, she had been for 12 years, but she saw a window. She saw a window open up because she heard Jesus was coming by. And like I said, she went to Jesus for a solution, and maybe she didn't even understand her problem. That's what we do a lot of times. We go to Jesus and we go, Jesus, we believe you're the solution. And Jesus goes, no, that's true, I am. What you don't necessarily understand is your problem yet. You see that by slipping up behind what she was hoping for is that this whole ordeal just blow over. She just wants to get her little healing. She doesn't want to be noticed. She doesn't want to be seen. She has already accepted the absence of importance in her own identity. She didn't think of herself as being important. She didn't announce her presence. She didn't walk in and go, Jesus, it's me. She snuck in and she wanted to be healed and not noticed. She wanted to be healed and slip away because what she needed was not only a physical healing, she needed a spiritual healing. She needed someone to validate the importance of her identity. But see, she didn't know that. She's going to Jesus for a physical healing, but what Jesus knew that she needed was also a spiritual healing. Because what good is it if you experience your healing and then you just go hide and you disappear and it doesn't change your life for the better? At that very moment, her hemorrhaging stopped. See, that's what we're seeing with Jesus, and that's what I'm going to bang this drum from now until the time I die, is that Jesus said, you're healed. When the unclean touches the clean becomes unclean. But when the unclean touched Jesus, the unclean became clean. So this idea that you're going to go to Jesus with some sort of a performance so that you can earn it is going back to an old scale that says, based on my goodness, I'm going to earn it. Jesus goes, that is not how it works. Your cleanliness does not come from scrubbing, because the more you scrub, the worse you get. Your cleanliness comes from Jesus based on his godness, not your goodness. You guys know I struggle with cliches, but I think that one might be a good one. There was no steps. She didn't sneak up behind him and Jesus turned around and hand her like a pamphlet or a workbook or, here, you fill this out and you go to this college and you go through this program and you do this and you get this human validation and you perform this and you do that and you have enough faith. Now, if you have enough faith, then there was no steps. There's just, it's clean. That's it. She touches Jesus and she's instantly clean. Jesus said, who touched me? Why did he say that? He already knew. He already knew who was desperate and reached out and touched him in desperation. He already knew. So why did he stop, turn around, and bring her to the forefront, which, by the way, is not what she wanted? Jesus went against her wishes. He says, who touched me? What are you saying? He's saying, the person who touched me matters to me, and they need to know it. They need to know. She needs to know that I knew she was coming today. I know where she's been. I know where she is, and she touched me, but she needs to know that she matters to me. Because if she would have snuck in and stole it from Jesus, she could have thought it was her own power. It was under my own power that I snuck in and I got something from Jesus. Jesus turned and said, let's directly head on. Let's face this. You just touched me because you thought I was a solution, and I'm not just going to stop at a spiritual or physical healing. We're going to go into spiritual healing. Okay. Listen to this. This is where it starts to get good. When no one stepped forward, Peter said, but Master, we've got crowds of people on our hands. Dozens have touched you. Now, if there's all these people around, it's talking, it's loud. I mean, it's dusty, there's people, it's smelly, it's hot, there's lots going on. So it wasn't like Jesus just peacefully turned and was like, hey. It's chaos. Hey, Hey, who touched me? Why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? He's bringing their attention to it also. He didn't just turn and talk to the woman. It was chaotic enough with all those people. He could have talked to her right there, and him and her could have had an agreement. He was teaching all of them something based on her story. Who touched me? Hey, come here, snap. Look, who touched me? And they're like, dozens have touched you. What? You can look at my notes. I wish I could show you my notes. I've got like 7 question marks behind that word. What? Dozens of people that day had touched Jesus. They had rubbed shoulders with Jesus. They had experienced as much physical proximity to Jesus as this woman, only they got nothing. They got nothing. They touched Jesus, the same Jesus on the same day that healed this woman of a 12-year issue and brought her back into society and restored her and brought her back in. Dozens of other people brushed up next to Jesus and nothing happened. It wasn't about the attendance. Church people, it wasn't about the proximity, because there were people that were close to Jesus that were getting nothing. The people whose windows were closed. Now, if you're like me, and you see that there were people that were there because Jesus was in style, they brought their kids to get like an Instagram picture with him. Maybe they're following the hype. Maybe he's got something for me. Don't you think there were people that are like, hey, maybe there's something I can get from him? And they touch Jesus, and their reaction from Jesus, from the person of Jesus was, He was right there in the midst of all this chaos. He was right there, and they touched him, and nothing happened. The window was closed. Their window was closed. But why? If you're like me, why? Why was this person able to touch Jesus and literally get nothing from it when this lady over here snuck through, just barely touches the hem of his garment, and she experiences life-changing restoration? Why is that? Because the truth is, everybody that was there, apologetics will tell us that everybody that was there needed Jesus as much as she did. It's easy to see because of her desperate state, because of her desperate situation. It would be easy to see, obviously, she needed Jesus, but they all needed Jesus. What we know is that they all needed Jesus just as much as she did. You ready for this? Their windows were closed. Why? Their comfort or their lack of desperation. Let me say it this way. The fact that they failed to see their desperation, the fact that the window was closed and they weren't able to see how desperate they were for Jesus. I had it written down as that they were disadvantaged, but I'm going to say it this way. They were at a proper vantage. They didn't have the proper viewpoint. They weren't viewing the situation through the correct window. They were seeing it, but their comfort had caused them to pull back into themselves. This is so important. They weren't that uncomfortable. They were there for Jesus, but you don't see them crawling to get to him in desperation. They're just casually observing Jesus. Does this scare you to think that there will be people who are in the right church? They're in the right building. They're listening to the right sermons. They're sharing the right songs. They're in the proximity of Jesus. Maybe they're rubbing shoulders with Jesus and nothing is happening because the desperation that they have, they don't see. The window's closed. Verse 48, Jesus said, "Daughter, you took a risk trusting me, and now you're healed and whole. Live well, live blessed." See, her desperation was visible. She was able to see it. She knew she was desperate. She had nothing else to depend on. Do you know why I think the Bible mentions that she was broke? Because there was other people that were probably broke that the Bible didn't mention that detail. The reason it mentions that detail with her is that if she was thinking, maybe there's another doctor out there, even if there was, she couldn't have afforded it. There's no socialized medicine. Even if there was a doctor that had a solution, oh my gosh, you guys, can we please, if you're taking notes, can you please make sure to get this point? She had been brought to a place that even if somebody would have had a solution, she couldn't have afforded it. What does that tell you about what Jesus is asking from you to accept his goodness? He's the good doctor, and he finds himself healing someone who had nothing to give him. What does that tell you about what Jesus is asking from you to accept his goodness? He's the good doctor, and he finds himself healing someone who had nothing to give him. What does that tell you about what Jesus is asking from you to accept his goodness? He's the good doctor, and he finds himself healing someone who had nothing to give him. See, any other doctor would have required payment, and she had nothing. When she found Jesus, Jesus required nothing except everything. What if we said it this way? Maybe what she didn't realize at the time, what she didn't see, what she wasn't able to fully understand was that it was her desperation, it was her lack of options, it was her absolute state of complete and utter hopelessness. Can I say it this way? It was her desperation that had opened the window for her. It wasn't opportunity that opened the window. It was desperation that opened the window because she had no other options. And when she saw Jesus, she recognized it as an opportunity. That is how people could see Jesus and get nothing from it. Bump up next to him. Hey, did you meet Jesus? Yeah. It's crazy, but a good economy, a really strong good economy, is not good for churches. Because it closes our window. It closes a lot of people's window that they're not desperate, they're not concerned, they're not broken, they're just, they're fine. How was church? It was good. What do you talk about? I don't know. Was Jesus there? Probably. You touch Jesus and nothing happens. She wasn't there for Jesus, the man, or the hype, or the fad, or the teacher. She wasn't there for any of that, because if she'd have been there for that, she would have been with the crowd. She was sneaking in because she was hopeful that Jesus was who he said he was. She was chasing Jesus as her only solution. Let me say it this way. Let's go back to the beginning with the challenge of looking at the stars. When she was aware of her smallness, her own insignificance, her own desperation, it allowed her to see Jesus as a solution. If nothing ever reminds us of our smallness, if nothing ever shows us our own weakness, if nothing ever shows us, if we're not able to see our desperation, we'll glance at Jesus and keep moving. Desperation forced the window open. She saw Jesus. Are you experiencing this right now? Can I ask, like at a personal level, aren't we experiencing this right now? That all of a sudden things are a little shaky and it's causing people to re-examine Jesus again? That all of a sudden Jesus is coming back into focus. And maybe not that you walked away from him. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you turned on Jesus or anything crazy like that. But maybe you just kind of were busy. You were just doing stuff. Maybe you were aware of Jesus and you thought, Jesus is aware of me and like we're doing okay. But now all of a sudden you're having this moment of like you're looking back to him now with a new level of desperation. What you're experiencing is an open window. Can I say it this way about the woman? Can I say it this way about the United States? Can I say this today about where we are? Is that she was able to experience a life-saving desperation. She had found herself in a life-saving desperation. You know how I know when I'm not there? I'm trying to control everything. Trying to control this. I'm trying to oversee that. I feel so much stress and anxiety. And if you struggle with stress and anxiety, a lot of times it's because you haven't accepted your own littleness. I think I'm big enough I can handle this. I think I'm big enough I can control this or I can do that. And I find myself in stress and anxiety and control. And that's what happens when I forget God's bigness and my smallness and I try to exchange it. Maybe God's not big enough. Maybe I'm supposed to do it. And all of a sudden I find myself in this chaos until eventually I don't even see Jesus anymore. I'm trying to do it myself. The stars, here's why I want you to do that. Here's why I want you to go look at the stars, is that they've always been there. There have been nights you got out of your car and walked in the house, walked right under that exact same blanket of stars and never stopped to consider it. They've always been there. We just forget it. Death has always been there. We just don't think about it. Jesus has always been good. We just stop forgetting. We start to forget it. We stop thinking about it. There are things that we lose when we don't dwell on them. If we don't dwell on them, if we don't make time to give them our thoughts and our focus, then we forget about them and they move to the back of our minds until we don't think about them at all. Every now and then we need something that'll snap the fingers in front of our face, sort of that wake-up moment. What we're experiencing with an open window, what I'm saying is like, it's as a nation, what we've had happen is that the world has gone, hey, whoa, wait a minute. And we look up at the stars, we're like, oh, wait a minute, that's right. I'm little, the universe is big. God is good. I'm in need. I'm desperate. And that moment of desperation is what opens the window so that you see Jesus. Let me put it into perspective. Let me say it this way. Where is that woman today? 2020. Where is the woman that Jesus healed that day? She's not with her healing anymore. She doesn't need it. She gave that body back. She was done with it. It got used up. She gave it back. Everybody who experienced a healing from Jesus then in the Bible, everybody that you see in the Bible that got healed, they gave that body back. Eventually, that healing came with an expiration date, and they go, that's it. I'm done. You can have it back. It was when Jesus turned and said, who touched me? That's where she is today. That's where she is today. When Jesus turned and goes, you are important to me. Not the you that's going to get buried someday. Not the you that's going to give it all back someday. That's temporary. The you that will always be. That's who I want to know. And I need you to know that matters. I need you to know. Church, I need you to know, wherever you're watching this, that when Jesus saves you and restores you, he's not saving your physical body. He's not saving your finances. He's not saving your job. All that goes back. He's saving a you that continues to live in that healing eternally. Here's a scary question, and I'm not a fear guy. I mean, if you know me at all, you know this is not a fear message or a fear concept, but let me ask you something. What about the people that weren't desperate for Jesus in the moment? Where are they? Where are the people who gave Jesus sort of a casual look, but they just didn't see their own desperation? They are now no longer in the proximity of Jesus, and all they have left is their desperation. Now, if you would say to yourself, well, that feels like fear-mongering, I want to work through that. But if it's true, I want to be aware of it. Because what she experienced in her desperation gave her a giant advantage. What the world said was the end of the road or the end of hope was what opened a window for an eternal relationship. It comes down to choice. It comes down to choice. Like in life, are we going to be willing to go look at the stars every now and then? To go conceptualize the goodness of God, the bigness of God, the injustice of the cross? Are we willing to give that time to bring things back into perspective? Or are we going to take advantage of a window that's open right now? Because if you would go, how can this be a window that's open? I'm desperate. That is the window. That's the window that drove this lady into an eternal relationship with Jesus. It was the desperation that opened the window so that she could even see Jesus. Let's pray. Lord, what I'm asking is in this season that we're given perspective, that we have a vantage point that shows us who you are and who we are. The truth is, God, everybody was equally desperate. Everybody was equally desperate for Jesus, but it was the desperate in the moment she was able to see it. Lord, we're asking that you give us your perspective. Let us see things that are true. Let us see these in this moment of opportunity, God, that we dwell on the things that are true. Lord, that we have that moment where we go look at the stars and try to absorb how little we really are and how good you really are. Lord, you put life back into perspective, because when you do, Lord, there's a sweetness that comes with that. Lord, the anxiety begins to go away, the desire to control and be in charge. When we realize we can't control it, we can have more peace in our life. God, that actually the anxiety is a window into peace. God, our panic can be a window into peace if we see Jesus when we open the window. Pray in Jesus' name, amen.
So we're going to take a moment to just encourage everyone to give tithes and offerings at this moment. I know it's kind of a time thing too, because like often when you hear a sermon that it really encourages you and you're motivated, that's kind of the time to do it, before you forget about it. So I would encourage you to give. In giving, we're honoring God. We're seeing him as our sufficiency. And we're giving of those first fruits that he's given to us, because he is the one that prospers us. He is the one who is our sufficiency and has allowed us to prosper.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We see you from all the different states, and it's so fun to be together. Like Neil said, we are going to go into a time of giving, so we just want to let you know all the different platforms you can use to do that. We have shilohranch.com, and you can also download the Shiloh Ranch Church app. And then the last thing I want to mention, we've had a lot of requests for people who are not tech savvy, and you can mail your tithe and offering directly in at P.O. Box 177 in Powell, Butte. So we'll post all the instructions to that, but just so you know.
Yeah, we've been seeing all of your comments from different areas. As Neil said, we're just so grateful that we can all come together in this way. And we have been seeing the comments of people hoping and praying that we do continue this when we are able to all come back together live. And we're with you. We want to be able to continue this as well. But one of the big things that we need in order to continue this is the support from you guys. So whether you've been to Shiloh Live before or you're watching from a remote area, we would just ask you to continue giving. If this is something that you want to see continuing, that's a big part of it. And one other way you can give is texting the word Shiloh Ranch. It's all one word, all lowercase, to 77977. That's an easy way. And of course, as Lacey said, we're going to be posting these instructions if you want to access them later. But other than that, we're going to go back into a time of worship. After worship, we're going to wrap it up a little bit, and then we're going to go into our live Q&A. So if you've been writing down questions from the sermon or just general questions at all, we did that last week and it was really fun. So keep writing down your questions. We're going to go back into a time of worship and then come back together and head into our live Q&A.
I will sing, sing, sing to my God, my King, for all else fades away, and I will love, love, love with this heart you've made, for you've been good always. And I will sing, sing, sing to my God, my King, for all else fades away, and I will love, love, love with this heart you've made, for you've been good always, good always. And I will sing, sing, sing to my God, my King, for all else fades away, and I will love, love, love with this heart you've made, for you've been good always. And who is like you, Lord, in all the earth? Matchless love and beauty, endless worth. Nothing in this world will satisfy, 'cause Jesus, you're the cup that won't run dry. Your presence is heaven to me. Your presence is heaven 'cause nothing in this world will satisfy. But Jesus, you're the cup that won't run dry. Oh, nothing in this world will satisfy. But Jesus, you're the cup that won't run dry. Yeah, God, we just declare those words. Your presence is heaven. God, we just thank you for this time that we get to spend with you, singing about who you are and how you love us. God, we know that you're the cup that won't run dry because your love overflows for us every single day. So God, we just ask for your mercy and your peace and your love. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Hey, we want to remind you guys too, we're at the 1 hour mark. If your community is looking for a church, if you guys haven't been able to keep a pastor, or if maybe a church in your community is closed down, our heart is to see these sort of services starting in small gatherings. It's called a micro gathering. What that means is, regardless of the size of what Shiloh is doing, we've seen it work. We're seeing it in Adel right now. Silver Lake has been doing it. There's these little gatherings of people that are popping up that the community is running the organization, and we can provide worship, we can provide the teaching, whatever it may be. So I want you to pray about what that would look like to have one of these kind of services in your own home when this gets lifted. That's our end goal. I mean, to me, that's our end zone that says we want to see God being able to plant small community gatherings that are not so pastor-centric. Because when it's pastor-centric, you're really relying on one person for the health of a lot of people. Be praying about what that would look like to have one of these in your home if you're having a hard time kind of keeping a church going.
Yeah. I think we're going to go into our Q&A. Last week we took a break, but this week we're not going to take a break. So if that's something you want to stick
straight
around,
into it.
Yeah, if that's something you want to stick around for, please do. Start asking your questions, comments. I know I saw one question already about more 1017 merch, and it's all on a standstill. It's all on a standstill right now because nothing's open to make them. So again, follow the Shiloh Ranch and the 1017 page.
If you are a knitter, and you're capable of knitting
Holly McLean, if you would
amazing
be
1017
okay.
merch, but I'm going to tell you, because of labor, it's going to be probably a higher price. So if you want to just like draw 1017, if you want to draw 1017 on one of your pieces of clothing that you already own and tag us in it, that would be helpful.
Just don't sell it because that's copyright infringement. So we'll come after you. I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh.
Seeing no questions, thank you everyone for jumping on and helping us out. Not at all.
Well, that comment has 2 question marks and 2 exclamation points after. So 1 hour,
1 hour
was
already.
technically
Nancy?
a question.
Yes.
You're right.
It's 1 hour already.
So we have some fun stuff coming up this week. We have new Live at Shiloh episodes.
Hey, is anybody that's tuned on? Are you guys watching those? We've been getting some good feedback. It's crazy that like the feedback on those has been from like text messages. We're not getting like the comments and the Facebook interaction, but we're getting text messages from people that have been watching it.
Well, and I think we also have those available on Apple Podcasts, and I know a lot of people that whether they're going on a run or doing things throughout the day, they're listening to it on the Apple Podcasts, which has been awesome too. So that's also available if you want to do that.
Yep. My dad had an interesting point, and I'm curious. He said that the story with the lady that touched Jesus, there was a verse from Malachi that said when he comes, there will be healing in his wings. And the wings were in reference to the hem of his garment. They would call those, it was a phylactery, it was a wing. And so there's a chance that she had heard that that's where the healing would be in Jesus. She wanted to sneak in, and so thought that was an interesting perspective. And I tell you what else is cool is that what we're seeing right here, did the other people who touched Jesus during that time not need spiritual healing? Yes, they did. But here's what I know about Jesus. You don't see that Jesus was running around sneak attacking people. Like, he's the Son of God. He is God and man in one. And here's what's crazy is that there was a level of almost like polite. He was polite about it. That when people were resistant, you didn't see him chasing people down. Like, he was available, like the children could come to him. But you don't see that Jesus was like chasing people down. So Nicole, to answer your question, yes, they absolutely did. But I think that's what's crazy is like when our windows are closed, when our mind's kind of locked off and we're just going through the motions, there are so many things that we need to be considering that just get missed. You know, like those finger snaps in front of your face moments are so important because it brings things back into focus. What does 10:17 mean? Wait. Oh, I lost it. We had some quote or comments at the bottom. Hold on. Getting to you. Hold on. I think she was the one that was asking for it. She needed it the same. Spiritually, everybody needs Jesus the exact same. Just some people are able to see it. Marcy Wilbur, the 1017 is the cattle program that we started in 2014. We raise your open cattle. It's based on 2 Corinthians 10:17. If you want to go look it up, it talks about all being a part of the same function here. It's my belief that by taking care of people, is it 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians? 1 Corinthians. I don't know where it's from. I don't know where we got that from. Anyway, by taking care of the people, the Bible says the poor you'll have with you always. And so one of the things that we want to do is empower people who are loving people that may be falling through the cracks, because we don't view that as taking care of other people. We actually view that as being a part of us. So.
Did you guys see the KTVZ news articles that we shared this week about the 1017 project upping the donations by like 166%? So that's cool. That's some cool news that came out this week. If you missed that, should be on the 1017 page.
We will also be selling Coriani hunts. If you or someone that you... No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. There will be more reviews this week. Yes, we're going to do more podcasts this week. We're having just people jump on.
Yeah.
What would a Coriani hunt even look like? Like we had a...
Releasing it into a tiger cage.
But you have to... Turning it loose in a tiger cage.
Hey, all you cool cats.
Nope. We're not going to turn
Okay,
Corianis loose with tigers.
more questions.
We're getting comments. We need questions.
Thank you for bringing worship and the sermon into my home. We are all walking around singing with Mary, making breakfast. Aw.
I got text messages from a friend that says, "Hey, we're watching you right now live." Wait, that sounds creepy. So,
thanks for tuning in. It was fun. It's always fun.
These take about 5 minutes to get rolling, and then the questions start coming in. So if you could just... Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when something's live, I'm hesitant to like log on because then it shows that I'm watching.
Yeah.
And there are people that I like to observe their craziness, but I want to be like involved in their craziness. And so I have to wait. And so it's funny. Like there are people that I feel like even on this, they're kind of wanting to observe, but they're hesitant to put their name on it. And like, I think that is interesting to see Jesus turn around and identify or bring her identity. Please provide info on how to cast from their phones to their TV. It's a better view.
That's pretty technical because it's super dependent on what kind of phone you have and what kind of TV you have. So we can try and give a general answer sometime soon.
All the Pixleys.
But,
Hi, Pixleys. Do windows open by God's grace only? Mike McLean. Oh, here's the questions that we're talking about. Yes, there it says that it is not amazing that we loved God. It's amazing that God loved us first, that our love is always in response to him loving us first. So yes, windows open by God's grace only, but I will say choice matters. And because choice matters, there are times that people are willing to just look away from it. You don't want to be involved, or you're so self-absorbed or self-reliant. I think that's the big one. Self-reliance of God wants to offer you something, and you're like, well, I want to try to do it myself. So to answer your question, Mike, yes, windows only open by God's grace, but sometimes we close them. Beth, is there anything outside things that we can do at church, like picking weeds, etc.? Yes, in groups of less than 10, and it's running through Jason Graham right now. I'll have Lacey follow up with you. Looking for Corianis in Arizona hunts. That's, yes. He knocks on our door and waits for us to see. Need healing, invite him, as Jordan shared. He never pushes himself on us. Love leaves us to choose. Yeah, and I tell you what's so crazy is that anytime you turn God into a formula of this is how you get saved. I mean, I remember as a kid being like, okay, I hope that when I die, I've got like a 10-second window to be like, Jesus, I'm sorry. But that's just, you turn it into a formula.
Yeah.
What was your quote about godness and goodness? We are not saved by our goodness. And I think that goes right along with that. I didn't follow the formula of, I was so good right at the last minute. I was sitting on an airplane one time with a guy, and he was not a believer. And he said, I don't know how you could be in support of a religion that says you can live however you want, but at the last minute. Right. And my point was, that's the formula that God doesn't even give. He says, when you lean on me fully, that we're not saved by our goodness, we're saved by God, his godness. Now, here's what's crazy. That if you were to say, well, only good people should get in. Well, it should be about letting good people get in. Here's the problem. That is more exclusive than what Jesus said. Jesus said, nobody comes to me except through Jesus. Nobody comes to the Father except through Jesus. And people go, well, that's too narrow. That's too exclusive. I would rather see, well, I want good people to get in. Well, what do you do for that guy that's dying in the hospital, that's having this life revelation moment that says, wait a minute, I haven't been good. The door's closed to that guy by your standard if you say it's your goodness. When God says it's through Jesus, that is not exclusive at all. It's open to literally whoever will accept Jesus as their provider. And I think that's where an open window is such a big deal, because it's hard for people to see that sometimes. Sometimes people are so self-reliant that it's hard for them to understand, like, wait a minute, my own goodness can't do it. It's that God's godness reached down and saved us while we were bad. You know, that, like, I think it's Romans 8:32, I think, but it says that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, which means in the middle of your badness, in the middle of your worst badness, hi, Ty Bean. You guys, Ty Bean used to give my horses hay for coming to church when I was in college, and I was such a terrible person. I was... Like, it was the height of my badness. The Ty Bean even, like, loves me at all is a miracle. Aww. And I love him and Heather. They're doing a great job. If you guys check them out, Cowboy Junction in Hobbs and Mexico. Monument. Are you in Hobbs or Monument, Ty? I think it's Hobbs. Talk about the meaning behind Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is an interesting one because it was the height of Jesus's earthly popularity. You know, they were throwing palm leaves in front of, I love this. They said that it was an act of war to ride in on a horse, and to ride in on a donkey was an act of peace. And they're like, let's take the government. Let's do it. You know, like, let's rally, civil war, let's do it. And they go, here comes Jesus. And they look up and he was riding a donkey, which was a proclamation of peace. And they're like, maybe he just couldn't find a horse. And so that's anytime that the human momentum starts to carry, I'm always aware of, like, wait a minute, is this positive, or is this just one of those moments where we think that Jesus is going to do what we've asked? Did you guys, I didn't share the clip, but there was a clip of a preacher today. I don't know how far into this I ought to get. It's live. Lacey's giving me but I will say this, that when you start declaring that your solutions, that God is obligated to your solutions, you're operating in Palm Sunday. You're operating under the false premise of Palm Sunday is God is going to do what I've asked. No, God's going to do what God does, and he will give you the opportunity to align to it, because the healing that needs to take place in this nation right now has absolutely nothing to do with the virus. Nothing whatsoever. It's never been the virus causing the problems. The virus is opening the window, and by the virus opening the window, we're seeing some spiritual healing, some self-reliance, some things that we need to lean further into God on, and it was the virus that opened the window to that.
What would have happened if you rode in on a mule?
It's happened. I know people. Nope. More questions.
Crack myself
Yeah,
up.
Ty, I remember, I'm not sure if I would admit this or not, but I remember, like, there was times that I was not in a good mental state, and I would go to church with Ty because he'd give my horses hay, and I couldn't afford hay.
Sometimes you have to bribe.
Yeah, he was those guys. They were such a blessing. They've got a cattle program. Ty, how many pounds of hamburger are you guys up to? Ty and their church started a cattle program also, and they're doing awesome. They were saying that people, like, stand outside the food bank and, like, clap when they bring food in, and I'm like, your food bank people could talk to our food bank people.
Yeah.
We could get a whole system here.
First time joining. That's awesome.
Okay, here's what I would, for the comment that says, I want to grow closer to God. Here's what, 10,000, that's amazing. Look at that, 10,000 pounds of hamburger. That's 40,000 meals for you guys keeping track. Want to learn how to grow closer to God. Here's what I would say, is that the temptation is that we want to grow closer to God by following the rules. We think that the rules are going to be what gets us closer to God. We go to the Bible and go, how do we do this? How to? Okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? Here's what I'm going to say. If you want to grow closer to God, go to the first 4 chapters in the New Testament, and you get to know Jesus first. By getting to know Jesus, everything else begins. Even Jesus, he said that if you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, that's the fulfillment of the rules. That is the rules. But here's the problem. You can't cause someone to love under compulsion. So God didn't come to you and go, here are the rules. If you follow that and you love me, then you're in. He says, get to know me, and the law will start to become fulfilled in your life. You will begin to just emanate more of who God is, not based on your goodness, but based on knowing God and God's goodness. It begins to create. That's why it says the fruits of the Spirit. The fruits, or the result of the Spirit working in your life, begin to produce the fulfillment of the law. But I love that. The desire to grow closer to God. I think we're hearing that a lot right now of people who are like, whoa, I'm realizing how exposed I am. I'm realizing how weak or how temporary life is. It's amazing to me how quickly we forget how temporary life is. And then we see something like this. And like I said, I'm not going to view the virus as the problem. I will not. I refuse. I'm looking at this as an opportunity to realign priorities, put things back in focus and perspective.
That's good.
Lots of goods. Thank you. I appreciate the support. There's got to be more questions.
sermon
I
after the
love
sermon.
questions like this. Yeah, the sermon after the sermon. Exactly. Let's see.
Amen.
Dead air. Okay.
Lapine is watching.
I like it. How would you answer people who view this situation as punishment from God because we're not following him? Well, that's the most human reaction we can have. I get it. I get why people would think that. I mean, if something bad, let me say it this way. If you think that your interaction with God is a scale based on how well you're following the rules, here's the problem. If you give anybody a list and you go, what is a good person? And anybody, believer or not, you go, give me a list of what does it mean to be a good person? And they write down 100 things that good people do. Then you were to show them that list and go, do you do these things? What people are going to say is like, well, nobody's perfect. What we're aware of, we're already aware of, is that we're already not living up not only to God's standard, but even our own standard. We're not even living up to our own standard. So when something bad happens, we have evidence that says, I'm not doing what I should have been doing. And the natural reaction is, and so this is a punishment. Or when things go well, to go, I guess I must have been doing better than I thought. When we can get past that, if we can discipline ourselves to get past that and realize that when the Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust, rain was a blessing. That means that God blesses people who are doing it right and doing it wrong. So if we can get past that into a scale that says, wait a minute, we're already past justice. Justice was 1,000 miles ago because that's what was on the cross and it was completely unjust. So now what we're operating on is that every opportunity that we come across, good or bad, for instance, when the verse that says that he's close to the brokenhearted, that means there is a unique special access that people have only in times of struggling. So what would you say to that? Like, oh, this is a punishment from God. Well, wait a minute. Is there an extra access to God? And if God is the point of your belief, if Jesus is the focus of your belief, anything that gives you more access to him has to be viewed as a blessing instead of a punishment. But if your basis for following Christ is your blessings and what you can get out of it and what you do and what you get, then you think that your scale's messed up because God doesn't give you what you think you earned, and then it causes resentment. Could this lead into the tribulation from Revelation? I love that question because here's the truth, and I'm gonna say it as bluntly as I know how to say it, it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. I'm not living for Jesus because of this or because of that. Like, I found Jesus, and I just want to hold to that. I want to hold to the person of Jesus because whether this is the tribulation or whether it's not, should not change the way I view this world. I should love people more completely. I think you see it now. People are starting to love each other more. And so what's cool about that is that it's not the scale of if this is, what am I trying to say here? It's not the tribulation or it is almost secondary to, do I have access to Jesus in this? Will the live stream continue after this virus situation is over? Terry, I love that question. We've got some growth that we need to do. I mean, we've got a studio right now, but that won't be the case. And so I'm actually hoping that we have an increase in giving or participation or people that are off in like remote spots. We would really encourage the giving because what we'd like to do is be able to set up a studio where stuff like this can continue. So to answer your question, we'll see. We'll try.
Well, the interesting thing that I feel like people didn't think about is once we all come back together again, Levi and I are now on stage. You're now on stage. Jacob's behind a camera. Eric's behind a soundboard. So then we kind of lose all the people that are doing this right now. So it's kind of down to equipment and also just bodies.
It is different, but we're liking the live too. I mean, if it's an option, we're going to do it. When Jesus rode in on the donkey, what would have happened if he had done what the people wanted and became their king and didn't go on the cross? They would have crucified him. Eventually, they would have crucified him because he wouldn't have been Jesus if he was pursuing man. Eventually, he would have led to what God wanted, and it wouldn't have worked. Is a window a paradigm shift? If so, how does confirmation bias affect us? Mike?
Dad.
Paradigm shift. I would say this. I would say it's clarity. I mean, that lady that saw Jesus, I want to make sure I'm answering the right question. Confirmation bias is where... To clarify, we're looking for something to confirm what we already believe. But confirmation bias is true whether it's faith or doubt or worry. Confirmation bias is true on both sides of the aisle. You know, everybody goes, well, that's just confirmation bias. You're looking for evidence to support Jesus. And I would say the same is true if you're going to continue to worry or fear, whatever the case may be. So confirmation bias is always there. So when a window opens, what I think is it allows us to address our own confirmation bias that says, if Jesus is doing that, have I aligned myself to Jesus or have I aligned myself to results? I have a friend's looking for a way to explain God to her children. They're starting to ask about who God is. She's looking for a church. God bless Shiloh Ranch. Okay. Well, what I would say to the children is this, is that children hear God sometimes more clearly than we do. And I mean, you don't want to just convince your child that every time they hear anything that it's God, but you go back to those first four. If you as a parent make it a natural response to God to go to the Word and find Him there and spend time doing stuff like this, as that child begins to grow, they will know who Jesus is based on what they've learned in the Word. I had a friend one time that was talking about when they're trying to find counterfeit money, when they're trying to spot counterfeit money, they don't show people all the counterfeits. They show them real money over and over and over and over again so that anything that doesn't line up to that, they know is a counterfeit. Does that make sense? So by showing your children the Word, what the Word says about the love of God, the pursuit of God, the goodness of God, then as they grow and they hear outside stuff, they can go, does this fit what I know to be true in the Word or not? If a person takes their own life, will they go to heaven? Christine, that is a question that is like so multi-layered and so multi-tiered. I wish I could go into more depth. I'm going to say yes, but I would like an opportunity to clarify that at some point. I think that would be an interesting conversation. But otherwise, what you're saying is that it's within our power to earn it or deny it. And I mean, I know that a lot of times suicide is in relation to mental illness. I know that if we die of a physical illness, that's not considered a sin. I think you've got to be really careful. I mean, if somebody's kind of in a bad spot and they're weighing the consequences, I mean, I would love to think that they would find Jesus, not avoid suicide because they didn't want the punishment. Does that make sense? Because if you don't take your own life because you're afraid of the punishment, that doesn't grant you access to Jesus. But if you are looking for Jesus in those moments, and I'm not talking about moments of mental health, I'm saying if you are looking for Jesus, that is the solution to both sides of that equation. YouTube, go subscribe to our YouTube. Our YouTube's growing. Everything's growing right now. Like our online stuff, it's going to be weird. Like when we see people starting to come back in person, it's going to be interesting I don't want this part to suffer. To answer the earlier question, I don't want this part to suffer.
Well, and it's cool seeing the growth because the way that social media works, once we hit certain numbers on certain platforms, kind of opens the doors to different things that we can start doing that we don't have the access to do now. So that's why we're kind of pushing you, go subscribe to the YouTube channel, because from there it can open a lot of doors to us being able to do new things too.
Yeah, we don't really talk about that. Like we're so busy doing our stuff. Oh, Ty and Stephanie Holly, I love those guys. I want you guys to know I miss y'all. I say it to everybody. I'm serious. They're so special. Cole and Cooper and the whole bunch over there in Mount Vernon. Love you guys. We don't really talk about the growth a lot. We're so busy. We're doing stuff and like we work outside and all the stuff that we got going on. This has been a good pause for us that says, wait a minute, there's a certain amount of growth that we need to make a priority. When you guys share stuff online, that helps. Follow us online, the subscription to YouTube. It's not because we're trying to grow our platform. It's because we're trying to reach further into these communities that might need these kind of churches. When you come back to church inside the building, have you considered continuing this type of Q&A after services? Possibly. I mean, again, the platform, we don't really have a studio. What we've got is the church. We're in the church right now. There will be more interviews coming up this week, Greg. So yeah, I actually love the Q&A type stuff. I think I almost get as much out of this part of it because I don't know what the questions are. You know, a lot of times, especially during Arizona, like when we're here live, we jump on a plane that afternoon and fly back to Arizona for what we got going on there. And so I don't get the kind of interaction that I would like.
Well, yeah, and the cool thing, even when you're not going back and forth between Arizona, can be so many people live here, I think for all of us in Powell, Butte after services. And so just being able to do it like this, where if you've, wanted to chat with any of us after service, but maybe haven't gotten the chance to, do it now.
Well, and the hard part for me is, and we've talked about this, is like if I come out of the green room before church, there's however many people on a weekend.
Yeah.
I don't get to invest any amount of time into any one individual. I feel like a politician where I'm like, hey, yeah. And I'm like, it feels like I'm doing a bad job of interacting. And so what I've done is like the green room, I try to really pour into the staff and the people that are going to be contributing to the service.
Yeah.
And like after church, I feel like I get to spend a couple minutes, but I don't really get to really pour into anybody as far as like a relationship would go before or after church on Sundays. And so the Q&A is interesting because everybody gets to kind of listen in. I struggle with helping my daughter build a relationship with Jesus. I want her to desire that relationship, not the social aspect of going to church with friends. Boy, I tell you what, the South specifically faces a unique challenge because it's so ingrained to our heritage there that there's an expectation. There's a social expectation that says you better do this, you better follow that. And no, I don't think anybody necessarily says that, but society, the culture down there really pushes people into church. And like I said, you can't cause someone to love under compulsion. I mean, you can't change someone's mind through force. You can change their actions, but you can't change their heart. And so when you start leaning into the grace and the goodness of who God is and the love of God, sometimes people mature into that because they don't, as a kid, there's so many things you just don't consider. But as you grow, if you're being taught the love and the goodness of Jesus, what we have a tendency to do is go, well, I'm not that bad, so God didn't have to be that good. By establishing God's goodness and our need for him, that gospel in my mind is what starts to build the love for who he is. Can we do a Thursday morning men's breakfast with me like this here? Several guys that are really missing our Thursday meetings. Awesome. How cool would that be to be able to have a Thursday morning Bible study with all the guys from everywhere, Scott? That'd be a great idea. You're all beautiful, awesome people. That's Jason. He's the same. Social distancing doesn't apply to Q&A. Ha, just kidding. Keep up the great
Actually,
work.
we are 10 feet apart, and we're actually green screened, photoshopped to be closer.
It's true.
Jacob has the ability to do that. So just tell that to Kate Brown. Do I need to be kicked off?
It'd be great. Podcast. If you guys haven't, like Mary said, a lot of what we're doing, everything goes on our podcast.
Yeah.
If you guys want to check out the podcast app, it's the one that looks like. Let me see if I can open it on camera. If you can
Unfortunately,
see it.
it's
Surely
only
you know it.
available on Apple right now, but
I'm not going to show all my podcasts. There's a lot of people that I wouldn't support on there. What I mean by that is I like hearing multiple perspectives. Any update on the 1017 merch? Can't wait for my hoodie.
everything is closed because of the virus right now. So we have unfortunately no way to make any new 1017
That's not true.
merch.
That's not true. Get a T-shirt. Draw the 1017 brand on there. Don't sell it, copyright infringement. We mentioned that. But here's what I'm saying. We need more merch out there. So if you will draw on your clothes and tag yourself, tag the 1017 project, we could have merch out tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just got a text message. It says the Kate Brown comment was savage. No, we didn't. What?
What?
I didn't even hear it. I was literally texting. I just know that it happened. Anyway,
Can we edit that out?
yeah, of your brains because it's live.
My dad's going to yell at me.
Love it. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Draw it on there. What if you did like a Q&A live after the regular service, in-person sermon, then Q&A a little later on the Facebook? Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think something like that would work. Here's what's crazy, though. Like, when we do these live, nobody's logging on usually except for Sunday mornings. We get, like, a real small participation level, and I don't know what that is, but, like, Sunday morning, people are geared towards logging on, and so I don't know what our followers are right now. I mean, it drops a little bit, but, like, if we do stuff during the week or later in the evening, it's just hard to get people to log back on for it. So maybe if we,
Which is
scheduled
fine.
it.
Which is fine because we do want to push people towards our YouTube page to watch after.
How many
as well.
people are on right now? Somebody comment.
149.
149, which is bigger. It's a bigger live participation than we get during the week. We look what you've started. Look what you did. But no, I mean, if we scheduled it because like if you get on a live and there's 12 people, most of those people are just watching, so that it wouldn't really even be a Q&A. It would just be a lot of me talking.
Well, and the podcasts that we do throughout the week aren't Q&A style anyways, because you're just interviewing one person.
Right.
But yeah, maybe it is something that we want to do on top of our kind of podcasts, more of a Q&A.
Yep. Well, and I would say like next week, this part's coming. So no politics. Agreed.
Should I go?
Our official stance is we're apolitical. Like the Q&A, what's cool about that is it's coming. So like during the sermon, be writing questions down. There's some of that today. Like as you think of something, if you hear something, if you don't understand it, jump on there and take a note. Like write yourself a note, and then when we start doing this, go to that. And I think to me, I like the Q&A because it's interactive. Like when I'm preaching, there's an assumption that I kind of have an idea of where people are. But when people just straight up ask a question, sometimes it was like, oh, I thought I answered that. I thought I filled that in.
And how awesome is it that we're interacting more with people now than we maybe were when we were all together
I
in the
now
same
know
room.
people's faces and names. Like as someone who struggles with that, to see names and faces of people who comment, that's the other thing. We go back and read the comments. Like we go back through and look at everybody. And so it's been really helpful for me to go, oh, I know that person. I should have known their name. And so by commenting, you're giving us a lot more of a step up. Also, the interviews, like when you
Yeah,
guys come
that's
back to church, you're going to have people, because of the podcast that we're doing, you guys are going to have people in person here in Powell Butte that you can say hi to. You'll kind of know their story. They won't know you. And
Even
it'll
from
be
a
really,
leadership level, I mean, obviously, I've known some of the people that we've interviewed, but some of the people I didn't even know went to our church. So that's been cool. And I think just people in the church watching those as well, maybe not knowing who they were, that they even went here.
Yeah.
So tune into those.
I tell you what I'm really hoping for in the next week or two as we're doing these. I really hope that somebody who doesn't believe the way that I believe would be willing to get on here and just have a conversation. That's what I'm hoping. And I don't know what that would look like. I don't want anybody to feel cornered or backed into a corner. It's not a debate. It's not to try to like change anybody's mind. I honestly just like interacting with people who think differently than I think. And so, yeah, I'd love to know if there's somebody out there that has questions that maybe would say like, hey, I don't believe what you believe, but I'd be interested to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Lots of good input there.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well,
Jacob's given us the eye.
Jacob's giving us the should we be winding it down. If you guys ain't got any questions, hurry up because we're about to shut it off.
Yes.
I tell you what, Greg, to your point of no debating politics and no religion, you know what? I don't agree. I think you can have a conversation about literally anything when both sides are leaning in. It's hard to do that in quick snippets. I will talk about politics with anybody. I will talk about religion. I'll talk about anything. I can talk about atheism. I'll talk about anything. I just want to know what people's perspectives are. If you go in with this determined, like, I'm going to convert you, that's where you run into trouble.
Should I talk about the time a lady stormed out of church and yelled at me?
No.
Okay.
As we move on from Palm Sunday to Easter, what do you recommend the scripture we meditate on? Here's the scripture that I would always send people to. Always, always, always. It doesn't matter what the situation is. This seems relevant. There's a verse in the Bible where Jesus says, "Do you believe?" And the answer from the dad about his own child to Jesus was, "I want to believe, but help my unbelief." As we are going through this season, the expectation is not you better do it right. You better get it figured out. It's literally like, hey, you don't have to have it figured out. This guy went to Jesus and goes, I want to believe. I want to live up to it, and I can't. Jesus goes, I'll do it for you. That's what I would say. Also, there's one more. How do we find out how we can help with the cattle program, feeding, or doing anything right now? Honestly, if you are giving online right now, I know that sounds cheesy. We've had so many people volunteering. We've got a certain amount of social distancing that we are complying with. We don't want 1,000 people out here right now, especially with volunteers. We've got cattle. We've got big equipment. The last thing we want is like a swarm of people who are like, teach us, because A, that takes more time and the liability is so high. By giving online, what you're doing is you are absolutely increasing the amount of beef that is entering into the food banks.
Yep.
So wherever you're watching, the 1017 Project, if you want to look it up, I shared it on my personal Facebook page too. Go through there and see if there's a way to start contributing. That right now, yes, Kevin White, we do need cattle. Every time cattle come in, they're being processed. If there's a waiting period on the quarantine, that we want to make sure the medicine or whatever's out of their system, we do that here. But yes, we do need cattle.
Any breed, any kinds, right?
Literally, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing
Doesn't
that
even need to
doesn't make hamburger.
Yeah.
There's everything that is a healthy cow makes hamburger. And what we're doing is we're not taking the best cuts. For you guys that don't know, we don't take the best cuts out. It all goes into hamburger. Calves, yes, absolutely. We've got all sorts of stuff. In fact, if it's calves, we can lease those out, and they can be a little bit of a revenue earner back until they're big enough to butcher. So yeah, literally anything. And if you'll go, how would you recommend? What's the phone number to the 1017 Project?
419.
541-419-0019, and that goes through the 1017 Project. We'll come pick them up wherever they're at. I mean, within reason, we'll come pick them up.
Even like going to the 1017 Project Facebook page, Instagram, to the website, there's all ways that you can message us, connect with us. So if you don't remember the phone number.
I got a soapbox.
Oh,
We have
look,
time for a soapbox.
Holly just.
I had this
Can you
conversation this
donate
week.
tigers?
Donate tigers. We prefer it. Yes. No. Here's my soapbox. Now, I hope that whoever's listening hears this part. I think this season is going to change what we understand to be about church. Unfortunately, you've heard there are places where like the churches are like, we can't afford to give more because we're barely covering salaries. Here's what I'd say to that. Our job is to be a ministry and a service to the community. I think that churches are going to have to really take inventory and say, are we being a positive impact to people who don't attend here? that I think what you're going to see in the next season of church communities, and I don't mean this church, I mean church communities, is how will they contribute to people who are not a part of that group, because that is the justification. When you look at the crowds that were following Jesus, Jamie, this kind of goes back to Nevada's question. When people were following Jesus, it was because of what he was offering. Now, maybe that's the wrong motivation. For sure, it's the wrong motivation. But they didn't hear his words about himself until he was able to establish that he was there to their benefit. And that what the 1017 Project does for us and any of the campuses where it's alive and well and working is that it creates a positive impact in the community. And the hope is that we get the opportunity to talk about Jesus to people, but we have to establish why we're a benefit to the community first. And churches that go, well, we can't afford that because we can't pay our salaries. In my mind, what you're saying is we can't afford to do the job because we're spending all of our money paying the people to not do the job. And so I'm excited to see that this season it's going to be I would hope the churches would really look at, for the people that don't go to your church, people that don't call that home, how are you able to be a benefit to the people that are outside your walls or outside your boundaries? I think that is where the church is headed. I'm curious in years when we look back on this, how true that turns out to be. We're saving that grass for all the donated calves. We're keeping it alive. We've been watering it. We've been pouring Rockstar on it once a week, and it's doing great. It's doing awesome. We learned that live grass and live goldfish do not do well at Shiloh Ranch.
That's right. How can we give specifically to fund the online sermons? Did you touch on that?
I did not.
Okay, let me start over. You can give to specifically fund the online sermons. You're going to go to either our app or our website, or even text Shiloh Ranch to 77977 or mail a check. And all of those options, you can choose a tab that does say online.
Do this real quick. Do this. If you're watching online and attending a church in Powell, Butte would not be an option, right now, comment Shiloh at home, hashtag Shiloh at home, and here's why. I would like to see how many people this is reaching that when this goes back to live wouldn't be able to attend in person. So if you're watching this right now, comment the hashtag Shiloh at home, and the reason for that is I'm curious to see how many of our people right now are being reached right now that wouldn't be if this was just a live
We've
Q&A.
counted different states that have commented, and I think we've gotten up to 12 or 13. Yeah.
Oh, Jessica, you are touching on one of my favorite topics about the Bible being sexist. You got to remember that the Bible was written in a very chauvinistic, sexist, male-driven culture. So keep in mind, the Bible was written to the people that were there that day. And so what it's doing is it is operating in the current culture. But if you look beyond that, then what you find when you go beyond that is you find Jesus, and he's interacting with women. He's elevating women. He shared the gospel of his resurrection first with women. At the time, you had to have 3 woman witnesses to counteract 1 male witness in a trial, in a jury. So if you were in court, you had to have 3 women that would corroborate the same story to be worth the same as 1 man. And Jesus gave the message of the gospel to the women first. So what's so cool to me about that is yes, the Bible was written during a sexist period in human life. Absolutely it was. However, if you look at what Jesus was doing, he was talking to foreigners, he was talking to prostitutes, he was talking to sinners, he was talking to women who didn't have the right to even speak. He was speaking like an equal to women who didn't even have the right to speak or make eye contact with men. So I love that when it says the Bible's sexist. It was written in a sexist period. However, it was absolutely Jesus who was elevating women to the point that even women were like, you're not supposed to be talking to me. Why are you elevating me? I'm a woman. And Jesus was like, no, you're so much more than that. You are not just your gender. You are a person that I care for. And in fact, when Jesus called that woman daughter, he speaks to the woman with the issue of blood and says daughter and brings her into an identity. So anytime that the Bible gets kind of pinned as sexist, that's one of my favorites. That's one of my, because there's just so much about Jesus that speaks to the opposite of that. So many Shiloh home comments of people that
Shout out Tony Schwartz in Florida. That's on the opposite side.
Valerie,
of the
I'm
That's
fairly
great.
confident. I love that you commented Shiloh at home, but I think you can come live.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. What do you think?
I think that's good. Yeah. Hey, you can still share this after the fact. It'll be on our YouTube page. You can share the YouTube broadcast later on to your Facebook. But, man, this has been awesome. It's been cool to – I'm with you. Hey, just know I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. We love the Q&A. I'm loving getting to interact. In life, we have windows of opportunity open at different times, but how amazing is it the inner world opportunity to open simultaneously. Karen, for you guys that didn't read that, Karen said, how cool is it that all of our windows are opening simultaneously right now, right here? And I 100% agree. Absolutely agree. I remember what I was going to say. I'm with the people who've said we'd love to keep doing the Q&A. We would love to keep doing the online stuff. Just know that's our heart too. I mean, it's been a real eye opener for all of us to say, hey man, I don't want to do it without this. We'll figure it out. We're working on it. Just know it's important to us too. We want to see it. We want to see it happen. So I'm bummed because like the minute we hang up, the minute we're done, like it's done. It's over. The whole Sunday morning experience is over. I'm not ready for it to be over yet. How random is that? I want it to keep going.
Who are you?
Who am I? Hey, you know what's crazy? How long have we been on?
Hour and a half.
So we were at a church one time that their church service, just the church service, went for 3 hours.
I'm gonna
3
throw
hours. Yep. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for us. If you guys have any more questions, Dragging the Arena listening from Texas. Hey, Billy Bob Brown. Hey, can I tell a story about Billy Bob real quick? He didn't give me permission, but I want to tell my favorite Billy Bob Brown story. I've told it to him. We were at a KJRA in Snyder, Texas, and Billy Bob, he had all of his clothes were like kind of big and baggy, and he was a little bitty guy, and he had this dog, and this dog had big, long, droopy ears, and we walk into Subway, and Billy Bob is just little. He's probably Cody Shea's age, and he's holding his little puppy, and he walks in, and he was just a sweet kid. And he walks into Subway, he's holding his dog, and the gal that's working at Subway, she's a teenager. She's kind of like over it already. And she's like, you can't have a dog in here. And Billy Bob, with big hat, big clothes, saggy dog, he goes, I don't see a sign. Just curious, South Dakota, are you a header? That's a very liberal use of the word header, but yes.
No
I did.
politics.
Where do you see that?
No.
Texas. Nope. Potluck. Make it a potluck, Holly. All right. Hey, it's what we got. Thank you for doing. Hey, you bet. Thank you. Hey, and thank you guys. Honestly, it doesn't make sense for us to do this if people aren't jumping on and like participating and commenting. Like you guys are as big a part of this as we are. I mean, without a doubt. I love that people are taking time out of their Sunday morning and jumping on. So
I'm gonna say shout out to Chris and Eric and Levi and Jacob and Lacey.
Careful,
and
you're almost to 10.
Well, not all those people may be here today.
They come in waves
They
and
come
in
waves.
like
we take shifts.
shifts.
No, but I think a lot of this wouldn't be possible without the team that we have behind the camera. So thank you to all of you. We love you. Goodbye.